sure was from this group here, so I won't go into it too deeply unless there are specific questions. We're going with an infrared system. There are really three systems that are kind of on the market these days. There's a radio system, radio frequency, there's an infrared system, and then there's the looping. It's called looping.
Yeah.
We're working with an IR system, infrared system. It's ADA compliant as a baseline, but it's also a high quality audio system. And some of the reasons that we're very focused on, really 2, 3, and 4 are critical for us. We have 6 classrooms. In the Bloomberg Center, we have 6 classrooms that are all adjacent to each other, and some of them have walls that open up to each other. A looping system is a fixed system that has one frequency, if you will, and it's very hard to control when you have multiple rooms next to each other, especially if they open into each other. So that's actually something that wouldn't work. The looping system works really well with an IR system. It's also flexible. That's really critical for us because as a tech school in an evolving market, we have no idea what kinds of spaces we're going to be needing 2 years, 5 years, 8 years down the road. So we need to be able to reconfigure those classrooms and the other spaces in the building as we need to. And so an IR system, when you put it in, it's very flexible. You can adjust it as you go, or you can change it in a lot of different ways. And the last one that is really important too, which is the IR system allows for multiple direct inputs. And what that means is when we have distance learning, let's say you have a professor who's talking, and then maybe you have someone else who's talking on the screen, rather than the sound from that person going into the room, it would go directly into this IR system. That works for things like multiple presenters, remote presenters, translators, if you have a foreign audience or a foreign speaker who needs to have simultaneous translation. You can do that through IR. You cannot do that through a looping system. And then finally, it is consistent with our Cornell's overall approach to technology. And we've benchmarked a whole series of other universities, and they use this for the same reason. We have nothing against looping. We know there was a lot of interest in it. It's just not appropriate for an academic environment in the way that it is for the kinds of environments that it's used in, train stations, certain kinds of theaters and auditoriums. Yeah.
Does the person who has the disability have to wear any special device
Yes.
in order to...
They do, yeah, they have to wear a receiver. That's the downside of the IR. The only system that allows you to use your existing hearing device, as long as it has a T-coil in it, is the looping.
So then someone who's in the classroom with a hearing aid has to have an additional something to hear
Yes,
properly.
that's right.
And then so if you had multiple folks like that or a convention or whatever, you'd have to clean those devices?
Yes, yeah.
Ah.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that these systems are typically used in environments where you have the same people coming in, like a classroom environment. So at Cornell, the way it works is if you have a hearing issue and you need one of these, you get one that you use for the whole semester. It's yours.
Right.
That's the way it works on the Ithaca campus. That's the way it's going to work down here as well. It is more complicated when it comes to the public because you have to maintain hygiene. You have to make sure that you have it staffed. But that's again, there's a balance. There's no ideal system, and from our perspective, the looping system literally doesn't work for the kinds of applications sort of the broad variety of applications that we have.
And is there another place on campus? Because I remember, I thought like Technion, and you would have different, not just classroom things, but
Yes.
also big, large discussions or star visitors
Right.
and guests. And then that might be a bigger crowd that's not your day-to-day student type crowd.
Right.
And you really want to...
We consider that. We do. We have one auditorium.
Okay.
It's 200 seats.
Okay.
We expect that to be used for public uses as well.
Uh-huh.
But it is also fundamentally part of the academic program. And so the kinds of things like distance learning, which is becoming really important in all schools, connecting multiple different media sources, that becomes really critical. And so, again, there's a balance to be had. We did consider putting looping in that one space.
That's what I was
We
getting
did.
at.
But the balance just didn't work because ultimately it doesn't serve the needs of the academic institution, and that's the problem.
And the aging population, about 10,000 a day, turning 60, will not necessarily be those visiting your campus or partaking.
We hope they are, but
They won't be able to hear.
No, I don't think that's fair. I think this is a system that is going to allow people to hear. The other thing is that I think there was more of a stigma of people with devices in their ears.
Yes.
Before it became very common for students to sit in class with earphones on all the time.
Yeah.
And that's actually something that we heard from the ADA compliance folks up in Ithaca is that 10 years ago, it was a lot harder to get kids to use this system. And now everyone wears earphones and they make them in such a way that it looks like you're just listening to your iPod, which many of them probably are.
Is the infrared?
Sorry, Judy. Sorry.
And will the person using the device be able to pick up the discussion going on in the room as well as the instructor? Or
Yeah.
does the person only hear what's being fed into a microphone or a
Yes,
specific type of receptor?
Yes and yes. And looping works the same way. Looping is connected to a microphone system. Any room that has amplified sound has the capacity for these systems. And so in an auditorium, you're going to have microphones around the room. And so whatever system you use, any of the 3 ADA compliant systems would require microphone use in order for people to hear. Yeah.
So is the infrared a wireless?
Yes.
When they wear the device, they don't have to. Do they have to be plugged into a jack or something?
No, it's an infrared signal that's sent throughout the room.
There are hearing aids that have the ability to pick up. I don't know whether it's infrared, but pick up a amplified audio signal, and there are certain places in the city that have such things. So
I think that's the looping. Yeah, I think infrared works based on there has to be a visual connection. So if something is inside your ear, it wouldn't be able to work. Yeah.
So you will have enough of this equipment for people to use, for people who are using the auditorium.
Yes, that's the challenge of the system is to have an operations plan that makes sure that you have it, that people check it out, that you get it back at the end of the event.
And did you guys figure out a percentage, or is there information on how many people in the population even need this? I mean, as it ages,
We know what percentage in our student population needs it, but
Yeah.
it depends on what kind of events we would be holding.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Just as an aside, it seems that for a tech school
Yeah.
to develop a new Wi-Fi system, that'd be a wonderful project.
That'd be thrilling, and as you know, we are focused on medical technology.
Yes,
so,
that's
you know,
our
yeah,
new
if
program.
If the innovation came out of us, we'd be thrilled. Absolutely thrilled. I think that was all I had. Well, you've already heard about this. Also, as John